The secrets rich people don't share. Why most people never become wealthy. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is not fast. It's not flashy, and it's not designed to hype you up for 5 minutes and leave you unchanged. This video is slow on purpose because the topic we're covering today requires patience, honesty, and a willingness to question everything you've been taught about money. Today, we're breaking down the secrets rich people don't share. And right away, let's be clear about something. These aren't secrets because they're hidden. They're secrets because most people psychologically reject them. Most people don't fail financially because they lack intelligence. They fail because they operate from assumptions they never question. Assumptions like hard work automatically leads to wealth, more income fixes money problems. Risk should always be avoided. Money is the goal. Wealthy people don't operate from these assumptions. They operate from a completely different internal framework. And once you see that framework clearly, you can't unsee it. By the end of this video, you won't just understand how rich people think. You'll understand why most people stay exactly where they are financially year after year. Part 1, the mental divide between rich and poor. The first and most uncomfortable truth is this: wealth is primarily psychological, not financial. Money flows towards certain behaviors, beliefs, and patterns of thinking. It avoids others. This is why two people can earn the same income for 30 years and end up in completely different financial positions. Most people believe money creates freedom. Rich people understand freedom creates money. The poor and middle class ask, how much does this cost? What if this fails? What's the safest option? The wealthy ask, what does this return? What's the opportunity cost? What happens if this works? This difference seems subtle, but over time, it creates massive separation. Scarcity versus expansion. Scarcity thinking sounds logical. It sounds responsible. It sounds cautious. But it silently limits everything. Scarcity says, protect what you have. Avoid mistakes. Don't risk embarrassment. Stay within known boundaries. Expansion thinking says, build skills that create value. Accept short-term discomfort. Risk looking foolish early. Focus on upside, not fear. Rich people don't assume money is scarce. They assume money is created. And that belief alone changes how they behave. Part 2, why hard work alone keeps people poor. One of the most damaging myths ever taught is this: if you work hard, you'll be rewarded. This is comforting. It feels fair. It feels moral, but it's incomplete. Hard work only matters after leverage is present. A janitor can work harder than a CEO. A laborer can work harder than an investor. A nurse can work harder than a business owner. Effort without leverage caps income. Rich people understand leverage deeply. There are only a few types: skill leverage, capital leverage, system leverage, people leverage, time leverage. Most people sell hours. Wealthy people build machines. And machines don't get tired. Part 3 time is the real currency. Poor people think in wages. Rich people think in time blocks. Poor people ask, how much does this pay per hour? Rich people ask, how many years does this save me? Time is non-renewable. Money is renewable. Every wealthy person eventually realizes this, often after burning years chasing income instead of freedom. That's why wealthy people aggressively outsource, automate, simplify, eliminate. They protect their calendar more than their bank account. Because once your time is controlled, your income follows. Part 4, why one income stream is a financial prison. A single income stream feels stable until it isn't. Rich people see employment income as temporary, fragile, limited. They don't reject jobs. They outgrow dependence on them. Multiple income streams reduce fear. Fear reduction increases decision quality. Decision quality increases wealth. This is why wealthy people build side businesses, investments, intellectual property, equity positions. Not all at once, but intentionally. They ask, how do I earn even when I'm not present? That question changes everything. Part 5, how money actually grows. Compounding explained deeply. Most people misunderstand compounding. They think it's about numbers. It's not. It's about time, plus consistency, plus non-interference. Rich people don't constantly interrupt compounding with fear-based decisions. They let systems work. They understand inflation quietly destroys idle money. They understand assets quietly create wealth. They understand patience is a competitive advantage. This is why wealth often looks boring up close. Part 6, Lifestyle Inflation, the silent wealth killer. Most people don't stay poor. They stay times busy maintaining appearances asterisk. Lifestyle inflation turns income growth into obligation growth. Rich people delay visible rewards. They build invisible foundations. They don't ask, can I afford this? They ask, does this move me closer to freedom? Most spending doesn't. Part 7, Networks, Access, and Invisible Opportunities. Money moves through people before it moves through systems. Rich people understand this early. They invest in relationships, proximity, reputation, trust. They don't network for transactions. They network for alignment. Opportunities rarely go to the best resume. They go to the most trusted connection. Part 8, Risk, Failure, and Why the Rich Fail More. Failure is unavoidable. Avoiding failure is optional and expensive. Rich people fail often, but they fail in controlled ways. They separate identity from outcomes, loss from learning, ego from strategy. This emotional separation allows them to stay in the game longer. And staying in the game is everything. Part 9, Learning is a wealth multiplier. Wealthy people read differently, learn differently, think differently. They don't learn for credentials. They learn for leverage. Knowledge compounds invisibly but relentlessly. Most people stop learning once school ends. Rich people accelerate learning once school ends. Part 10, Health, Energy, and Decision Quality. Every bad financial decision traces back to fatigue, stress, burnout, emotional reactivity. Rich people protect their sleep, nutrition, focus, mental bandwidth, because wealth requires clarity. And clarity requires energy. Part 11, Giving Value and Long-Term Power. The largest fortunes are built by solving problems for others. Giving isn't charity, it's leverage. Contribution builds reputation, influence, access, trust. And trust is the most valuable currency in the world. Why most people never apply this. So now you know the secrets rich people don't talk about. Not because they're hidden, but because they require responsibility. Once you understand this, you can't blame luck. You can't blame the system. You can't blame timing forever. You gain control. And control is uncomfortable, but it's also freedom. You don't need to apply everything. You just need to start thinking differently, because wealth doesn't arrive suddenly. It compounds quietly. If this video made you think differently, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And comment below, which part of this video challenged you the most? I'll see you in the next one. How wealth is actually built and why most people never get there. Most people don't actually want to be wealthy. They say they do, but what they really want is relief. Relief from stress. Relief from uncertainty. Relief from pressure. Wealth itself is uncomfortable. It requires responsibility. It requires delayed gratification. It requires making decisions without validation. It requires standing alone before results show up. And that's why most people subconsciously reject it. They want security without change. They want comfort without discomfort. They want reward without responsibility. Wealth does not work that way. Money is not a reward for effort. It is not a reward for being moral. It is not a reward for suffering. Money flows toward leverage, positioning, and value creation. And if you don't understand that, you'll spend your entire life wondering why working harder never seems to move the needle. This is where the real divide begins. Not between rich and poor, but between people who understand how money moves and people who don't. Most people are paid just enough to survive. That's not an accident. Most jobs are designed for predictability, not prosperity. Predictable workers show up on time. They perform defined tasks. They accept incremental raises. They do not disrupt the system. From a system perspective, this is ideal. From a wealth perspective, it is limiting. Stability without growth is stagnation. Wealth requires asymmetry. Your upside must be larger than your downside. Your reward must not be capped by hours. Your output must not be directly tied to effort. That is why salaries feel safe but rarely create freedom. Hourly thinking is one of the strongest wealth limiters. The moment your brain asks, how much does this pay per hour? Your future is already capped. Wealth does not grow linearly. Hourly thinking trains you to optimize efficiency instead of opportunity. It trains you to protect time instead of multiplying it. It trains you to avoid risk instead of structuring it. Wealthy people rarely know their hourly rate because they do not sell hours, they sell outcomes, they sell ownership, they sell leverage. Once income depends on hours, exhaustion becomes the ceiling, and exhaustion never builds empires. Every wealthy individual eventually understands leverage, not hustle, not motivation, structure. There are only a few forms of real leverage. Skill leverage means mastering abilities that scale beyond your presence. Capital leverage means money producing money. People leverage means teams and delegation. System leverage means processes that run without you. Time leverage means decisions that compound long after execution. Most people operate with no leverage. That is not an insult. It is simply the starting point. Remaining without leverage guarantees financial ceilings. Saving money alone will never make you wealthy. Saving is defensive. Wealth is offensive. Saving protects. Investing grows. Most people save out of fear. Wealthy people deploy capital with intention. Saving alone loses to inflation. It creates false security. It delays understanding how money works. You do not learn money by hiding it. You learn money by using it intelligently. Even small investments teach lessons savings never will. Wealth grows through participation, not preservation. Poor people see risk as danger. Wealthy people see risk as probability and positioning. They do not ask if something can fail. They ask how badly it can fail and whether they can survive it. They cap downside. They expand upside. Avoiding all risk guarantees stagnation. And stagnation is the most dangerous position of all. Failure itself does not destroy people. Emotional attachment to failure does. Most people internalize failure as identity. Wealthy people externalize failure as data. They do not say, I failed. They say, that attempt failed. That separation allows iteration, and iteration is required for wealth. People who fear embarrassment never scale. People who fear judgment never lead. People who fear failure never build. Most businesses fail for predictable reasons. They are built on passion instead of demand. They lack systems. They depend entirely on the founder's energy. They ignore cash flow. Wealthy founders build boring businesses, predictable revenue, repeat customers, clear margins. They chase sustainability, not excitement. Sustainability compounds. Employees participate. Owners decide. Participants get paid. Owners get rich. Ownership does not always mean starting a company. It can mean equity, royalties, intellectual property, profit participation. Wealth flows to ownership because ownership controls distribution. Lifestyle inflation is one of the quietest wealth killers. Income rises. Spending rises. Nothing changes. Rich people resist this instinct. They keep their lifestyle stable while their assets grow. That gap is where freedom forms. The poor spend raises, the rich invest raises. Same income, completely different outcomes. Your environment shapes your beliefs before logic ever gets involved. If everyone around you lives paycheck to paycheck, avoids investing, normalizes debt, and resents success, you will absorb those beliefs unconsciously. Wealthy people curate environment intentionally, not arrogantly, strategically. Beliefs are contagious. Networks matter more than talent. Talent opens doors. Networks decide which ones stay open. Most opportunities are never posted publicly. They move through trust, through reputation, through proximity. Money is a mirror. It exposes discipline, emotional control, decision-making quality, values. Money does not fix character. It amplifies it. Long-term thinking is rare because it requires patience and emotional regulation. Wealth grows quietly at first, then suddenly, most people quit before the curve bends. Wealth rewards endurance more than brilliance. Poor health destroys focus, decision quality, and consistency. Wealth requires clarity. Clarity requires energy. That is why wealthy individuals protect sleep, nutrition, and mental bandwidth. Burnout destroys more fortunes than competition ever will. Giving is not weakness. It builds trust, reputation, and influence. The largest fortunes solve problems for others. Value creation always comes before extraction. Most people will never apply this knowledge, not because they cannot, but because it requires responsibility. No shortcuts, no excuses, no one else to blame. Wealth removes the comfort of victimhood, and that makes most people uncomfortable. Wealth is not dramatic, it is disciplined. It is patient, it is quiet, and it rewards those who stay when others quit. You do not need motivation, you need direction. You do not need luck, you need leverage. You do not need permission, you need commitment. Part 3. What wealth becomes after money is no longer the problem. At some point, money stops being the main challenge. This moment does not arrive suddenly. It does not come with fireworks. It arrives quietly. Bills no longer create anxiety. Emergencies no longer feel like disasters. Time begins to feel less compressed. And when that happens, something unexpected occurs. You realize money was never the destination. It was the tool. What you are really buying with wealth is control. Control over time. Control over decisions. Control over who and what has influence over your life. This is where part 3 begins, because most people believe wealth is about accumulation. In reality, wealth is about autonomy. And autonomy changes everything. Most people live reactive lives. They respond to emails. They respond to bosses. They respond to bills. They respond to emergencies. Their days are shaped by other people's priorities. Wealth reverses that relationship. Wealth allows you to choose when you respond, what you accept, and what you walk away from. That ability alone is priceless, but it also comes with weight, because once you have control, you can no longer blame anyone else. When you have options, every decision becomes a mirror. And many people are not prepared for that level of honesty. This is why some people sabotage themselves just before financial freedom. Not consciously, but psychologically, they return to chaos because chaos feels familiar. Freedom feels unfamiliar. Freedom removes excuses. When money is no longer the problem, responsibility becomes unavoidable. That is why wealth is as much an emotional journey as it is a financial one. Money amplifies who you already are. If you are disciplined, wealth expands discipline. If you are impulsive, wealth magnifies chaos. If you are grounded, wealth increases stability. If you are insecure, wealth magnifies insecurity. Money does not change character. It reveals it. This is why identity work matters more at higher levels of wealth. Early on, effort creates progress. Later, behavior determines outcomes. Many people reach a certain financial level and stall, not because they lack opportunity, but because their identity cannot support the next level. They still see themselves as someone who struggles, someone who reacts, someone who survives. Wealth requires an identity shift. From survival to stewardship, from consumption to allocation, from proving to building. True wealth is not about how much you can spend. It is about how much you can direct. Direction is power. Most people associate power with control over others. That is a misunderstanding. The highest form of power is control over self. Control over impulses. Control over attention. Control over emotion. Control over time. Wealthy individuals who last understand this deeply. They do not chase stimulation endlessly. They do not need constant validation. They do not confuse noise with progress. They design their days intentionally. They protect mornings. They minimize unnecessary decision. They simplify environments. Because mental clarity is the most valuable asset they have. Decision fatigue destroys wealth faster than bad investments. Every unnecessary choice drains energy. This is why many wealthy individuals live surprisingly simple lives. Not because they cannot afford more, but because simplicity preserves focus. Focus is leverage. When your attention is scattered, your results fragment. When your attention is disciplined, results compound. Wealth allows you to buy back attention. No constant financial stress, no panic-driven decisions, no short-term survival thinking. But attention must still be trained. Freedom without structure leads to drift. This is where many people fail after financial success. They remove pressure, but do not replace it with purpose. Without purpose, wealth becomes hollow. This is why many wealthy individuals struggle with boredom, restlessness, or dissatisfaction. They solved money, but not meaning. Meaning does not come from consumption. It comes from contribution. At higher levels of wealth, the question changes. It is no longer, how do I earn more? It becomes, what am I building? Who am I helping? What problem am I solving? What remains when I am gone? Legacy is not about being remembered by strangers. It is about building something that outlives your effort. Systems, organizations, knowledge, opportunities for others. True wealth creates momentum beyond the individual. This is why wealthy people think in generations. They do not just ask what benefits them now. They ask what creates stability long after. They invest in education. They invest in infrastructure. They invest in people. Because the strongest form of wealth is continuity. Money that requires constant defense is fragile. Money embedded in systems is resilient. At this stage, wealth becomes less visible. Fewer displays, fewer signals, more quiet influence. The loudest people are rarely the most powerful. Power does not announce itself. It positions itself. The ability to walk away is power. The ability to say no without explanation is power. The ability to choose alignment over profit is power. Most people never experience this level of autonomy. Not because it is unreachable, but because it requires patience, most people never practice. The modern world trains immediacy, fast results, fast validation, fast entertainment. Wealth is slow. It rewards those who tolerate silence, those who continue when no one is watching, those who build without applause. That is why social media success rarely equals financial freedom. Visibility is not leverage. Attention without ownership is fragile. Wealth favors those who build quietly, who accumulate assets instead of likes, who compound systems instead of chasing trends. Eventually, money becomes background noise. At that point, the real work begins. How you spend your time defines your life. Time spent reacting creates exhaustion. Time spent creating creates fulfillment. Wealth gives you the ability to choose creation, but choice requires discipline. Without structure, freedom decays. This is why wealthy individuals create routines even when they no longer need to. They schedule thinking time. They schedule reflection. They schedule learning. They protect solitude. Solitude is where clarity forms. Clarity allows direction. Direction creates impact. Impact gives wealth meaning. Without impact, money becomes weight, heavy, distracting, empty. Many people chase wealth to escape discomfort, but discomfort never disappears. It simply changes form. Early discomfort is financial. Later discomfort is existential. The question shifts from how do I survive to why am I here? What am I building? Who benefits from my existence? Those who never answer these questions drift. Those who answer them build legacies. Legacy does not require fame. It requires intention. It requires living deliberately. It requires choosing long-term value over short-term pleasure. This is the final truth about wealth. Money is a multiplier. It multiplies your habits. It multiplies your values. It multiplies your flaws. This is why the inner work matters as much as the financial work. Without alignment, wealth collapses inward. With alignment, wealth expands outward. The people who truly win are not those with the most money. They are the ones with the most control over their time, their mind, and their direction. They wake up without urgency. They work with intention. They rest without guilt. They choose projects, not obligations. They create space for thought. And thought is where the future is shaped. Most people never slow down long enough to think. Wealth gives you that space, but only if you protect it. The final stage of wealth is not accumulation. It is stewardship. You become a manager of resources, time, capital, people, ideas. You stop asking what you can get. You start asking what you can build. And that shift changes everything. So if you have followed this entire series, understand this. Wealth is not about becoming someone else. It is about removing constraints so your true nature can operate fully. It is about choosing direction over reaction. It is about building systems that free others as well as yourself. And it is about accepting responsibility for the life you create. Money will not save you, but it will reveal you. And if you are prepared, it will empower you to live deliberately, not loudly, not desperately, but intentionally. That is the real secret.